Trying to think about what to talk about tonight, and I was going through some things and thinking about some ideas, and I thought about the idea that we want God to intervene when we're in a tough spot. We want God to do something. We want God to show His power and to fix something that maybe we've gotten ourselves into because of a wrong choice that we've made, or maybe just a rough patch that life has put us in. And you hear of people, you see it in the movies, you hear people say it, I've said it, God, if you will get me out of this, I'll straighten up, or I'll do this, or, get me out of this situation. You think about how many times David prayed that prayer. How many times did David complain? How many times did, some of our quote-unquote giants of faith get put in positions that they wanted God to get them out of? And we're not going to talk about David tonight, but you think about some of these things. You think about David. You think about Moses. You think about anybody, Gideon. Just anybody that did anything that God chose to use, and they said, wait, hold on just a second. I'm going to need some extra proof. I'm going to need some extra strength. You're going to have to remove something in front of me. You're going to have to physically move me to action. And sometimes, God says, I'm going to do something very powerful, but you're going to have to take the first step. And I think about the Israelites as they're leaving Egypt, and they're happy, and then they come to the Red Sea, and now they're complaining because the Egyptians are following behind them. And they're not, this is not a group of 10 or 15 people. And, there's millions, there's a few million people most likely leaving the land. And so their caravan is miles long. And they can see the Egyptian army approaching them. They get to the Red Sea and they start complaining and say, well, God brought us out of Egypt, which geographically speaking, they really weren't out of Egypt at that point. Brought us out into the desert. Now He's going to kill us. Brought us out here, and basically, they complain and they say, God, get us out of this situation. And He parts the Red Sea. They go across. The Red Sea closes on the Egyptian army. And as you know, they're out in the wilderness. Then they complain again. It seems like, they forgot what they just saw. They complain. They're hungry. They're tired. And even though they have God and His Spirit with them leading the way, they complain. They complain when Moses went up on Mount Sinai. And they take matters into their own hands, and then because of that, they're wandering for 40 years because of fear. And God tells them, hey, how many of you, when you were growing up, your parents told you, it will be okay. If you do this, it will be okay. Anybody ever heard, hey, it'll be fine. That's what God told the Israelites. He said, I'm giving you this land. All you have to do is trust me. And they didn't trust him. So they're wandering for 40 years. God finally brings them to the borders of Canaan and brings them to the banks of the Jordan River. The Jordan River was not a huge river. At this point, probably, at least by today's specs, maybe as wide as 75 feet at its widest. Not a huge river, not a particularly long river, somewhere around 90 miles total between the Sea of Galilee, north of the Sea of Galilee, and then between the Sea of Galilee and the Dead Sea. But the Jordan starts at the base of Mount Hebron, which is about 9,000 feet above sea level. Starts there and ends in the Dead Sea, which is about 1,400 feet below sea level. So that's a huge drop. So still today, the Jordan River is one of the fastest flowing rivers. It was viewed as kind of like the catch-all. It was kind of a dirty river. You think about Naaman going to, God told him, go dip in the Jordan River. And he's like, that river? So they're on the brink of going into the promised land, and here's the Jordan River. And we'll be in Joshua chapter 3 tonight, if you want to turn there and follow along. And so they're about to finally, after 40 years of hardship, 40 years of doubt, they're about to see the promise of God come to fruition. They can see it. And I'm going to read a few verses. Joshua chapter 3. Starting in verse 1. Early the next morning, Joshua and all the Israelites left Acacia Grove and arrived at the banks of the Jordan River, where they camped before crossing. 3 days later, the Israelite officers went through the camp, giving these instructions to the people. When you see the Levitical priests carrying the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord your God, move out from your positions and follow them. Since you have never traveled this way before, they will guide you. Think about how had they traveled before? Pillar of cloud, pillar of fire. They had never traveled looking at the Ark of the Covenant. Stay about a half mile behind them, keeping a clear distance between you and the Ark. Make sure you don't come any closer. I'm sure after, seeing some of the things that they had seen, they had no problem staying away from the Ark of the Covenant. And Joshua told the people, purify yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do great wonders among you. So he says, basically, let's prepare, let's get our minds right, let's make ourselves presentable, and we're going to watch God work. Verse 6, in the morning Joshua said to the priests, lift up the Ark of the Covenant and lead the people across the river. I don't know about you, but not all that easy just to walk across the river, to wade through the river, a typically fast-flowing river. Joshua says, that's what you're going to do. Oh, by the way, you're going to be carrying the Ark of the Covenant while you do it. You just have to hold it up. So they started out and went ahead of the people. Verse 7, the Lord told Joshua, today I will begin to make you a great leader in the eyes of all the Israelites. They will know that I am with you just as I was with Moses. Give this command to the priests who carry the Ark of the Covenant. When you reach the banks of the Jordan River, take a few steps into the river and stop there. This is not Rolling Fork River. This is not Pepper Creek, Bear Creek. This is, think of in terms of the Red River, something like that. Mountain Fork River, when it's flowing pretty fast. He says, take a few steps in the river and stop. So he's telling them, and then he tells the Israelites, listen to what God is saying. Starting in verse 10, he says, today you will know that the living God is among you. He will surely drive out the Canaanites, Hittites, Hivites, Perizzites, Girgashites, Amorites, and Jebusites ahead of you. Look, the Ark of the Covenant, which belongs to the Lord of the whole earth, will lead you across the Jordan River. Now choose 12 men from the tribes of Israel, one from each tribe. The priests will carry the Ark of the Lord of all the earth. As soon as their feet touch the water, the flow of water will be cut off upstream, and the river will stand up like a wall. Sounds familiar. They'd seen this before. But that wouldn't happen until what took place? All 12 people, all of the priests that are carrying the ark, have their feet in the river. So they set out. Now here's the kicker, verse 15. It was the harvest season, and the Jordan was overflowing its banks. Some translations say the Jordan was at flood stage. So I don't know about you, but a normally fast-flowing river at flood stage, if you know anything about rivers and flood stage, you know that's not a good combination. The river is swollen, it's flowing faster than normal, and God says, oh, by the way, I want you to walk into that while carrying the ark. Keep in mind, somebody was struck dead trying to steady the ark when somebody stumbled. Don't get it wet. Hold it up. Any of you ever tried carrying something heavy above your head, above your shoulders? Not easy. What had Joshua told them earlier? He told them the day before. Tomorrow, God is going to do something great. But you have to take the first step. So the Jordan is at flood stage. It's overflowing its banks. It's flowing fast. As this is the end of verse 15. But as soon as the feet of the priests who were carrying the ark touched the water at the river's edge, the water above that point began backing up a great distance away at a town called Adam, which is near Zarethan, and the water below that point flowed on to the Dead Sea until the riverbed was dry. And all the people crossed over near the town of Jericho. So similar to the Red Sea, but a little bit different. Not only did the water part, there was a wall of water. When they went through on the Red Sea, there was a wall of water on both sides. Now, God basically said, I'm going to defy gravity on one end, and I'm going to let gravity handle it on the other. So they had seen two very important bodies of water at least partially be dry. To see that river downstream be dry as far as you could see had to have been something awesome to witness. But none of it would have happened had the priests not put their feet in the water. You think about all the people that God chose. You think about Jonah. God told Jonah to go to Nineveh. What did Jonah do initially? He went 180 degrees the opposite way. He told Moses, he said, Moses, I'm going to use you. And Moses said, you can't use me. I can't talk. He told Gideon he was going to use him. He was going to bring him a great victory. And Gideon said, I want you to prove it to me. He said, I'm scared. I want you to show me something that tells me that you are going to do what you're going to do. You think about the disciples on the boat on the Sea of Galilee in the middle of the storm. They're afraid. They're in danger of capsizing in the middle of the night. And then they see Jesus. And you think about what Peter did. Peter walked on the water just like Jesus did until he lost his focus. So sometimes, God says, I'm going to use you, but you have to make the first move. You have to put your foot in the water first. I haven't read the book. It's on my list. It's a rather old book, probably written about between 20 and 30 years ago. I believe it was written by John Ortberg. It was called, If You Want to Walk on Water, You Have to Get Out of the Boat. And that's true. You can't walk on the water if you're sitting in the boat, or if you're sitting on the bank. You can't sit on the sideline and just expect God to work His magic and work His miracles. Now, He certainly can, but just because God says that He created the earth and He has all power, He also has the power to not intervene. He also has the power to say, I will help you. He's always there, but sometimes we have to take a step. Anybody ever done something that they didn't want to do? And it turned out to be the best thing you could have done? You were scared. You were maybe scared that you couldn't do it, or scared of how you would look doing it, or what other people would say. And it turned out to be the best thing you could have ever thought about doing. I'm not so sure if I was one of those priests, if I would have been really psyched up to do that. I grew up in Russellville, and I've seen the impact, I've seen the power of a flooded river. I remember one time there was so much rain upstream in Russellville and upstream that the water, had they not opened the lock on the dam, the water would have been over the dam. It actually covered the dividing wall leading into the lock itself. And I remember standing at the top of the stairwell that normally went down probably about 40 or 50 feet to the bank, and the water was about 3/4 of the way up the bank, and holding on to that handrail along the steps and just feeling the water bash against those steps, or bash against that handrail underneath the water. Oh, by the way, you're going to carry God's ark. You're going to carry God's dwelling place while he's traveling along with the Israelites. And God had certain instructions. You know, while you're carrying it, don't drop it, don't touch it. Oh, by the way, you're going to step into a flooded river. But don't worry, as soon as your feet touch the water, as soon as everybody gets in, I'll do my part. You see that constantly throughout the Bible. Things that all God wants us to do is to act. Take a step. Say that first word. Well, I can't talk to that person because I don't know what to say. God's heard that before. That's what Moses told him. He said, I don't know what to say. How many people said, I don't know what to say? I can't do that. I'm not strong enough. Sometimes we see what other people have done and say, well, I can't do that because I'm just fill in the blank. I'm too short. I'm too old. I'm too young. I'm too scared, whatever. I saw something on Facebook last week sometime, and it had names like Noah. It had names like Moses, David, you name it. Flawed people, and we tend to think that God is only going to pluck people who are already on top of the mountain. You think about all the people that God chose to work for Him, and He chose the people that most people wouldn't choose. He chose people that were down and out. He chose people that weren't necessarily trained to do what He was about to do. So the point tonight is just to hopefully encourage myself, encourage you. When you see an opportunity, when you think you're being prodded, sometimes you think, I think God may be trying to tell me something. He probably is. All you got to do is take a step. Say that first word. Lend that hand and let God handle the rest. Not easy. Sometimes taking that first step, you're stepping into a raging river. But it's amazing what happens when we take that first step and let God take over. It may not be a literal parting of the water, but it can be a life that's changed because you decided to act. Your life has changed. Somebody else's life has changed. How many of you don't like to swim? You don't have to raise your hand, but think about that. you're afraid of water. How many people that were afraid of water have been baptized? A whole bunch. Sometimes we have to go in the dark. It's not fun. But God promises that He's there with us. Just think about that this week as we go throughout, this time of year. You've got graduations, you've got high school graduations, college graduations, and you've got a lot of young people that are happy, but yet they're scared. I mean, we've all been there at some point, on some level. And let's be helpful of people that may be down and out. Be mindful of opportunities to serve, opportunities to, as Tony says, be Jesus with skin on. It may be uncomfortable at first, but the benefits far outweigh the awkwardness at the beginning. So let's think about that. If you have any need tonight, feel free to come forward. Find somebody to talk to. If you want to study, there's plenty of people here that would love to do that. If you have any need at all, you can make that known if you feel free at this time.